Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kitchen Chat TV. I'm Margaret McSweeney here at Revolution with the legendary Chef John FOLSE talking about food. Thank you so much. It's great to be in your restaurant.
Well, Margaret, so nice to have you well, you know, in Louisiana, we always get excited about company. So when company's coming, we set up the table. So thanks for being here as our company today.
Thank you. And I just got back from Dookie's and had a lovely kitchen chat with Chef Leah Chase, and she speaks so highly of you.
Well, she's such a dear friend, and not only a dear friend, but a friend to the United States. When we think of food in this country and we think of the icons that really will go down in history as the people who put the greatest mark on our cuisines regionally, I can assure you that of all of the chefs whose names are so powerful and in lights today, will all be overtaken by Leah Chase in the final memoirs that's going to be written. She's the queen of Creole cooking, not only the queen of Creole cooking, but a friend to every chef in this city. She has trained more of us. I was in a gumbo cooking contest with her recently, and it ended up being she and I in the finals. And I said, oh my God, I said, I can't win. I hope I don't win against Leah Chase. Well, I did win. And after the judges came to us to report the win, Leah Chase looked in the camera with that twinkle in her eye, and she said, it's okay that he won. I taught every one of them everything they know about gumbo. So it's my gumbo who won anyway. And she was right. She was exactly right. She's a dear, dear friend. She's a friend to the common man, to the greatest chefs, to the church, to her people, to our people. She embraces every single person she meets, and whether it's race relations in the 1950s and 60s, Leah was in the middle of it. When the food revolution started in America to define the regional cuisines, Leah was in the middle of it. And when all of us young chefs were dying to find our place in the world of cooking, Leah opened the door for most of us to walk in. And I'm certainly one of those who walked into Leah's door. So she's a great friend and a teacher.
Yes, and she's talking about constantly learning. Even at her age, she was saying life is a process of learning, and she has taught so much, and we have all learned so much.
Well, you know, it's a humble nature that really makes Leah stand out, and the fact is she's very honest about how the humble messages that come out of her mouth is exactly who she is. She's not pretentious. She doesn't think she's accomplished anything. She feels that everything she has been a gift from somebody else. And all she does with her life, even at her age here, is more than all of the rest of us give to anybody. No one comes to New Orleans seeking culinary education and not sit at the desk of Leah Chase. If you miss Leah Chase, you've missed all of what New Orleans is about. So great friend, great humanitarian, great teacher, wonderful lady, and the love of my life. I promise you that.
Oh, that is so sweet. And I am just so excited that she won the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's James Beard Awards.
Well, and so deservingly so. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who could have trumped her on that. I wasn't able to make it, but I was so lucky to have to be a part of the video that night, because they came to me and asked for a few of my thoughts about Leah. Leah and I used to travel quite a bit, as I'm sure she told you. And I put a little thing together called a study of Cajun and Creole cuisine. And I grew up in a Cajun home. My father was a trapper. He was a French trapper. That's what he did for a living. My mother died when I was 7. She left 8 children behind, 6 boys and 2 girls. She was 35 when she died. And my dad never remarried. And with the help of an African-American woman, a lot like Leah Chase, whose husband was a butcher, she was just a wonderful lady who had just happened to meet my mother in the swamplands of Louisiana, run across her one day, had a conversation, and through that conversation, my mother told her, if anything ever happened to me, I really hope a lady like you will look in on my children. Because my mother knew she was ill. She died a few weeks later, and this African-American woman, Mary Fasher was her name, and Mary knocked on my dad's door of our little Cajun cabin 2 weeks later after we buried Mother and said, I'm here to help. And when I asked, well, help what? And she said, I'm here to help you raise these children. And Leah reminds me so much of that African-American mother of mine, because without Mary Fasher, who not only taught us everything we know about cooking, she also taught us about our place in life. And how important it was, because she was the example of sharing. She was the example of giving of herself for anybody else in need. And Leah is the epitome of that. Just giving of her total self to everyone, never saying no to anybody, regardless of whether she's sick, whether she's not feeling well. Even today, as she moves around mainly in her wheelchair, she still travels as much as I do. And so Leah is much more of just a great friend. She's been a great teacher of mine, but more importantly, she reminds me of the mother I never had. Very special lady.
That is just beautiful, just goosebumps and oh, so heartfelt. Well, on the subject of food, I have a basic question. I was reading about everything and you talk about a swamp pantry. Right. What is a swamp pantry?
Well, in Cajun country, where we lived in the swamplands where our front door touched the Mississippi River and our back door touched the swamplands of Louisiana. The swamplands, of course, are the deep, dark forest area that the Acadians who arrived here from Nova Scotia, Canada, back in the 1760s, were given this land because nobody else wanted it. And early on in my life, whenever there was any need in our house for anything, whether it was a seasoning, whether it was a meat, whether it was a fish, whether it was smoke wood, whatever, Dad would always say, just go out into the swamp floor pantry. It's all right there. And that resonated with us through life because it was true. Every single thing that we needed to survive in the swamps of Louisiana, whether it was the pelt of animals that we could sell for fur. My dad would always say if we killed an animal and sold its fur, we ate the animal. And that was a product of the swamp floor pantry. We had no stores. We had no transportation. The language was French. Even though we were 70 miles from New Orleans, we were a moonshot away from civilization. Every day, we just opened the doors and walked out into the greatest cornucopia of richness in cuisine and culture that anybody could have ever hoped to be in. So I consider it a great gift to be there. And when I talk of the swamp floor pantry, I'm talking about the Garden of Eden that God gave the Cajuns who were exiled from Nova Scotia in the 1750s, run off of their land, separated from their families, and yet, as the good Lord has a great way of doing, He lays you back down in a horn of plenty, and that's exactly what He did for us. And even though my dad spoke French and didn't have a high school education, he raised 8 children with the help of Mary Fasher, and all of us did pretty doggone good, and we were never hungry. I can promise you that. And we're all great cooks in the family. I'm the only chef, but my 7 brothers and sisters are all great cooks, every single one of them, because we were taught to cook by not only a great father who was a great cook, and trappers had to cook for themselves in the swamps, so they knew all of the raw spices, the wild spices, the vegetables, the fruits off of the trees. And of course, Mary Fasher was the ultimate cook. So between those two, how could we go wrong, right? I had to be a chef. What else could I be?
And you have this beautiful restaurant here in New Orleans, Revolution. Can you tell us about this beautiful room we are in?
Well, nothing changes in my life. I mean, I know that I've been given a great gift, and that is the gift of cooking. I've been given the gift of love for my culture. I've been given a great gift of a love of people and a willingness to share everything we know. So this restaurant was designed and built for the single purpose of making sure that every person sitting in the seats at our table would have the question answered. That's probably the most important question that they have. Who are the Cajuns? Who are the Creoles? Where did these people come from? What foods did they bring? What were their ingredients? How did they assimilate and intermarry into the cultures to create the Creolas, the mixture of colors? And so I built this room, which is our Storyville parlor, with portraits and murals on the wall depicting the 7 nations. And there's actually 8 portraits here because 2 of those French nations on the wall, the Cajuns of Nova Scotia, Canada, and the French from Paris and the Old World. So on the walls of this room is those nations when they arrived from the 1680s all the way around to the Italians who arrived here after the reunification movement failed about 1864, which is also the end of our Civil War. And on these walls, you're going to see the Native Americans, the French, the Spanish, the Germans, the English, the Italians, the Africans, all of those cultures that came together during a 100-year period to create the mixtures that we call Creole. And of course, that's where the word Creola comes from, or Creola crayon, a mixture of colors or cultures. Imagine the explosion of flavor. Imagine the explosion of raw ingredients and new materials that were coming in at the hands of these immigrants, and how through the intermarriage of these cultures, a new cuisine, a new music, a new landscape, a new architecture was founded in the city of New Orleans. And this restaurant is my attempt to be ready every single day with a well-trained staff to answer the questions of what makes New Orleans special. Why are we unique? Why do people come and fall in love with Louisiana? What is it about this place that makes people say, I've never been to a place quite like it? And they're right about that. There's no place like it, because nowhere in the world in a 100-year period did 7 nations, some against their will, coming over to this very spot called New Orleans, and over the next 300 years create a culture that is so unique to the world, everybody has to see it, everybody has to taste it. And I just happen to be lucky enough to sit in the middle of it. So.
Oh, this is great. And I love on the whole theme of answering people's questions. Behind us is the answer to the question you get asked quite a bit.
Yeah, behind me is my turtle soup recipe. And there's a great story to this painting on the mirror. You know, turtle soup is one of the most famous soups in New Orleans. We know that turtle soup originated in England, and we know that it was a clear broth. And the English sailors would catch sea turtles and boil them in salt water from the sea and create this wonderful broth. They would actually throw the turtle meat back into the sea. They just wanted the essence of the meat to create a bouillon or broth. When that got to Louisiana, back in the early 1700s, the French added the dark brown roux to it. Spain added all the spices, the onions, the celery, the bell pepper. The Indians put a little bit of the filet powder, that nice wild powder from the filet tree, the sassafras tree. Every culture added a little bit of their own flavor to it. And eventually this great soup that was more like a stew emerged out of the French pots of New Orleans that became known as turtle soup. Everybody wanted my turtle soup recipe because we were pretty famous for it in my restaurants in Louisiana. And when I built this restaurant, I decided that I would put my turtle soup recipe on the wall, paint it on the glass, and wait to see how long it would take our public to find out that that's the recipe they've been looking for all those years. So that's my turtle soup recipe. You probably want to write it down before you leave.
Definitely. And more on the subject of food. Can you tell us about, is it White Oak Farm and your vision with the wonderful farm?
Well, White Oak Plantation is a beautiful plantation home in Baton Rouge. We're about We're about 80 miles from Baton Rouge here in New Orleans. And of course, it's our capital city of Louisiana. And it was settled by the English and the French, of course, many years ago. Spain was there as well. And back in the early 90s, I was able to purchase White Oak Plantation, which is a plantation that sits on about 30 acres of land on the outskirts of Baton Rouge. And I had my catering division out of White Oak. White Oak has professional kitchens there. We have trucks that take food. In fact, we cater all over the world out of White Oak. I was called to do the London Olympics a couple of years ago. All the food actually came out of the team at White Oak to get all that food to London. But we do cater all over the globe. And White Oak over the years have just been a really fantastic, beautiful catering division ahead of our company. And at some point I decided it's time to convert the acreage into what these nations would have been growing when they got here. So we started little by little to create the gardens and to raise the animals. I have heritage hogs. We have heritage chickens. We have 7 different gardens that depict the 7 nations of Louisiana. And we also have antique tractors. We have beautiful antique tractors from the 1935 to the 1950 era of John Deere. We have fruit orchards. We have lakes that's stocked with largemouth bass and fish. And yet we've maintained the forest area and we've maintained the look of the plantation. We grind grits and corn and flour there every single day. So it's a working farm. We actually, and it's a great place for training our chefs. It's a great place to kind of invigorate the chefs to come and walk the grounds and eat the fresh figs off of the trees this time of year. We have 25 different varieties of figs growing on the property. We have oranges, we have lemons, we have pears, we have peaches. So it's a great living testimony to the foods that these people brought. And to get chefs on the ground, chefs that work for us or chefs that we bring in, to just sit and walk the grounds and just look around and savor what they see is enough to get the juices flowing again. And that's what White Oak is all about. So we cater there 7 days a week, but it's also the origin of inspiration for a lot of our chefs.
And it sounds like the Garden of Eden.
It's a beautiful place. It really is.
That's great. And so what is next on your plate? I know you've been filming quite a bit for television. Can you give us a sneak peek about what's around the corner?
Well, I do have a national PBS series, as you know, and we just finished, we shot half of my last series, which is Hooks, Lies, and Alibis, the history of fishing. And of course, we write encyclopedias on each of the topics of my television shows. So we have the Encyclopedia of Cajun and Creole Cuisine. We have the Encyclopedia of Hunting and Game, the Encyclopedia of Fishing, and the Encyclopedia of Vegetables, which we just finished. And it goes back to biblical days. And Michelle York, who's on our team, she's vice president of marketing for the company, but she's also the lead researcher on all of those books. She produces my television show. And we also do a weekly show for Fox and a weekly show for CBS. So we have a lot of television in our life. And just today, in fact, I just finished shooting 9 shows, and tomorrow I'm going to shoot 9 more, and we just keep on going. So yeah, we stay busy and we continue. The joy of my life is to bring the story of Louisiana and her people to the world. That's what I do best. I enjoy it. I think I do a pretty good job of it too, because I love it so much. And I always love to see the eyes and the faces of people that's hearing the great story of the Cajuns and Creoles for the first time. I've opened restaurants in China, in Russia, in Hong Kong, in Taipei, Taiwan, Seoul, Korea, London. I mean, you know, we've been all over the world. And if there's anything that inspires me most, it's just to see for the first time people hearing that great, unique story of a place they've heard about but never seen or never visited, and hear it from the mouth of somebody that has a different accent and somebody who they say, wow, that guy sounds pretty interesting. He loves what he does. And whether it's a convention group or whether it's a television show or whether it's a trip to talk to chefs around the world, it doesn't matter. If I'm telling a Louisiana story, I'm a happy guy. And then to be able to take a Leah Chase or somebody like that with us to do our charity work, because Leah is very philanthropic, and we're involved in a lot of wonderful work philanthropically, as well as most chefs are. That's where we get the juices flowing, you know. So what's next for me? I don't know. I guess the good Lord will open up another book and we'll walk in it, you know. That's kind of the way it is.
That is terrific. And speaking of the taste of Louisiana, what are 3 items that a home chef that might not live in Louisiana must have in the pantry, the swamp pantry?
Well, I think immediately somebody would think hot sauce or something like that. And of course, hot sauce can be kind of strange at times, because really Louisiana cooking isn't that hot and spicy. Hot sauce is a condiment that we love to put on the table to sprinkle in our gumbos or soups. So I think it's important that you have a hot sauce, regardless of which one you choose, because you should always put a sprinkle of it in whatever you're eating if you're eating Louisiana. Secondly, I think you have to have a smoked meat of some kind, a smoked sausage, a smoked andouille, one of our Spanish sausages like the chorizo that the Spanish brought here, the andouille, the French, all of them heavily smoked, and wonderful sausages, whether they're beef or whether they're pork, combinations of. We love those flavors of smoke and spice in our food. And certainly the trinity of flavors. You cannot cook in Louisiana without having onion, celery, bell pepper, garlic in the pot. So I think if you have a good smoky meat, I think if you have the trinity of seasonings and maybe 1 or 2 more, you have to have a cast iron pot. You have to have that. And then, of course, a shot of hot sauce and a little salt. I tell you what, you can improve anybody's food.
A taste of Louisiana. And thank you so much, Chef John.
My pleasure. It's always great to tell our story, and I thank you so much for visiting Revolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, dear listeners and viewers. And make sure you come to New Orleans and experience the story in the Storyville Room and sample the deliciousness of Louisiana.
And make sure they bring a pencil and a piece of paper to get the recipe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.